janky production value. You see it a lot in the Xbox games. You do. The first-party Xbox games are, comparatively speaking to PlayStation 5, the games are janky. Just little things that first-party developers at Sony would never let slip. That's true. Flip side, though, lately, at least you see the promise of a lot more interesting gameplay and freedom in the Xbox games, where you have much more of a linear path and a focused story that you're traveling, not in all of them, but in a lot of the PlayStation games. It's not good or bad. One's not right or wrong. One's totally right. The other one's totally wrong. But I bring it up because the other day, you may have seen this, the Xbox folks sat down with the Avowed folks over at Obsidian, and they did a bit of a deep dive. Now, number one, I loved this. I was interested in the game. Now I'm really interested in the game. But here's a preface, though. Remember last year when Pete Hines sat down with a similar kind of interview, talked about Redfall? When I saw the deep dive, I'm like, ooh, that's pretty freaking great.
If you want to play a game by yourself and get a great arcane story, you can absolutely do that in Redfall. But you can also do things that you haven't been able to do in an arcane game, like experience it with friends and find out sort of how the whole can become greater than the sum of the parts. You can go off into this amazing sort of dynamic, ever-changing world and sort of experience and explore for yourself, and you come back the next day and it'll look and feel like a different experience, even though you're in the exact same part of the game. I mean, I think those are the kinds of things that Arcane does that really bring that sort of extra special element that makes their game so compelling. I think when folks play the game, and even when they see more of the game, I think they'll start to see all of those things about an Arcane game that they love and appreciate. You know, why it's won multiple Action Game of the Year awards for Dishonored 2, is their ability to bring all of those things together, really high level of polish.
Terrible game. Well, had elements that were pretty cool, but overall, not only was the game kind of bad, forgettable, but one could argue Pete Hines was just lying his fucking ass off because he made it sound great. And I'm like, dude, this game's shipping in 3 months. You knew then what you know now. So this could be more of the same hoodwinked, bamboozled Plymouth Rock, you know what I'm doing. It could be all that, but let's assume that these guys, especially given the pedigree, they've made this kind of game before, they're known for their quality games. Let's assume these fellas and Filettis here on the stage are the real deal. Well, this was a good presentation. It sold me more on the game than I ever have been. I'm quite excited for this game now. But it does bring up the question, what is more valuable to you, to me, to the world, to the market? To the market, huh? What's more value? I had this muscle milk. They're not a sponsor at all, but I don't have a sponsor. You would sponsor. I have a Hyper now. Point is, what do people buy more? What do they really care about more? I'm going to show you this video. By the way, I help you out. I edited all the boring shit out. It's tight. It's quick. Get the meat of it. What do people care more about? What are they going to buy? What are they going to play more? They're going to play the fancy schmancy, beautifully produced games on the PS5, or are they going to start gravitating more to this freedom that the Xbox games seem to offer? Let me show you the clip, and I'll talk to you on the other side.
For me, it's really about our player-centric approach to roleplay. Our studio's motto is "Your world's your way." And so the way we really approach choice and consequence and everything else is just giving players opportunities to define who they are in this world, how they want to behave, like just what fantasy, what challenges they want to undertake. And so with all of the content we design, whether it's quests, companion relationships, or gameplay, we really try to create this player-shaped whole so that we're always leaving room for players to really step in.
We're noticing just with the player, they're mantling their way through. It's a very vertical area, and there was actually one part of the footage where they look down and there's enemies there, and they choose not to engage. So if you could just talk about like the size of this area and just like how that affords the ability to like choose even just what to engage with and what not to.
Your literal path.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like it's open zone, right? So comparable to Outer Worlds areas on the larger side, and multiple paths essentially to be able to tackle combat situations
or avoid them.
Or avoid them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
As you mentioned, there's a wonderful sense of verticality, just a lot of wonderful nooks and crannies to explore, and that's something that we really wanted to take advantage of, and also set up, as Gabe mentioned, really fun combat encounters around that let you either just, you know, jump in, charge right in, or take a more tactical and measured approach. And you see that even in this first combat that you encounter when you dive through that skull's mouth and you come up out of the water. Our playtester here takes the rightmost path, which is the sneaky one, but you can also just, Leroy Jenkins your way up the middle and just jump right into the fray. But what we're exploring here is just one tiny little adventure space in one corner of the region.
And is this something you could even miss? Is this an optional area or something you're definitely going to hit?
It's absolutely missable. Discoverability and letting players be the authors of their own experience is obviously very important to us. So the content you're seeing here, the quests you're encountering, the little stories and nuggets of adventures you're finding, that's really for players who go out and seek it out.
So exploration gets rewarded, of course, and this is, from my understanding, a side quest too. So it's definitely something you can stumble on, decide to partake in or not.
Right? See, the first time it was probably an Atari game, the first time I experienced multiple ways to solve a puzzle or a scenario, but I didn't recognize it. The first time I recognized it was Deus Ex, where I was like, oh my God, this is revelatory. Because it made you feel so much more immersed in the world that I can approach things my own way with my own different tactics, my own different exploratory sensibilities, just like you saw in this clip. I mean, that whole section you could just skip. Not that I would want to skip it, but it's like, yeah, if you don't explore, because think about what they're saying. If this is true, and if there are a number of those, what they call adventure spaces or whatever, that are that packed and that dense with content, it's not just that you could miss it and that's like a neat little check. Oh, that's cool. It's the fact that if you explore, look at what you can have paid off for you. It's like, it's not just like, oh, I climbed this mountain and went around this ledge and upped my stats so I could figure out how to make the jump across the chasm, and oh shit, it was just a little piece of gold I got. No, you get this whole new bit of content. That's fucking cool. I love that. That freedom that I think is lacking in a lot of games. What's exciting about it here is it's not just the level exploration, the narrative, but it also goes into combat. Check this out. Listen to some of the stuff you can do, from the weapon types. I will talk about it on the flip side. Here it is.
Yeah. So what you're seeing here is our dual wielding system. Basically, the player has two loadouts, and you can put something in your offhand and a weapon in your primary hand, and we allow the player to mix and match one-handed weapons. So right there, what you're seeing is your sword and board, right, going into it and trying to close the gap in the distance, and having the ability to parry with your shield and power attack with your sword.
So there was a shielded enemy, and it felt like the sword and board stopped working. But then you also, right there, you pull somebody in, a little, get over here.
Yeah, so that's one of our ranged units that basically is out in the distance. You're using Into the Fray, which is a mechanic to allow you to pull the enemy closer to you. With Into the Fray, you could use like a fireball ability that creates like an AoE on the ground, right? And then pull the enemy into the fire, they get
Devious.
on fire. Again, we have power attack. That's a blocker. That's essentially not your basic melee attacks are just not going to go through it. So you're gonna have to use your power attack to be able to break their block. If you're using the wand, there's a lot of homing going on there. There's a lot of it's magic damage. It's going through their armor and stuff like that.
That's why I like it.
Yeah, exactly. Versus again using a melee weapon where you're going to have to get closer to them.
It's very flexible, and it supports players mixing and matching between weapons, between ability trees. Respecking is, pretty easy for players who really want to try something different. So when I'm playing, I kind of love to follow my sense of curiosity, and sometimes you'll find a new unique weapon with some pretty nice buffs on it, and maybe you'll decide to rock that for a while, even if it's not what you've been using previously. But there are definitely some pretty fun and wild combinations, like you can do your traditional sword and board, or, play more of a magic wielder with a grimoire and a wand. But you can also take a pistol and a shield and just charge around the battlefield and fight characters at medium distance.
When I was down at Irvine, the team was very generous to let me play a very early build, and I got to experience the dual wielding wands, and it's so snappy and fun. It's exactly what I was thinking it would be. But I'm curious, because we're seeing a little bit of that now, where you have different spellcasting effects on each.
What you're seeing there is a sort of enchanted wand, and there are potentially other elements that you can maybe find. But we have an elemental system where you can light guys on fire, you can freeze them, you can shock them. We have objects in the world that the player can interact with. They're not just on weapons, right? They're not just on wands, right? You can You might find something with the sword that has it, right?
There was something when I had gotten a play where I wandered somewhere else and ran into an area that was gated off, and I was able actually to use that freeze to help to progress in the exploration.
Yeah, you can destroy barriers to maybe reach ledges that you can't normally. Lots of fun options there.
And a lot of what we saw, like we saw a Tanglefoot ability, for instance, which was really cool because when you're freezing an enemy, you're totally freezing them. But when you're trapping them with the Tanglefoot ability, like ranged attackers can still get you. So there's a lot of nuance there that as a player you have to consider.
Nuts. You ever see that slip nuts? Right? That's cool, man. I love that you can switch up the weapons. I love the idea of like, I'm going to get a gun and a shield and just run around and be a mid-range guy. I love the fact that I can have a projectile weapon or a melee weapon, and then in my left hand, I have a wand that does spells that will allow me to mix and match, like they were saying, like pull people into a fire or pull people into an ice block that I've created with my wand and then shatter them with my sword. It's just, there's so much, and you're switching on the fly. It's not based on class. The freedom carrying over to the combat sounds pretty fucking good. Again, I always got Pete Hines in my brain. Ding. Yeah. But I do, because I don't, they got to earn my trust back. But assuming there's the real deal is pretty fucking cool.
We're always trying to balance how these elements work together to, again, create an experience that's cohesive and consistent, but also allow room for surprises and nuance and fun, and not get so precious about the dogma of what we're building that we don't allow for those expressions of creativity and those things that, we as developers love to create and we know players are going to love to find.
Now, I'll tell you what I love about this little segment of their video is it encapsulates just the philosophical difference betwixt these guys and I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not, there's not, whatever, think what you want. I want to see Sony making more games like this is the point. I'm not bashing Sony. They make great games, but when you hear these guys talk and you hear the executives talk, it's like I get so grossed out when they're like, we're storytellers. We're storytellers. Shut up. You're not. I mean, yes, you tell stories, but you make games. You make interactive experiences, okay? I love how these guys at Obsidian talk about it, where it's like, yeah, we have lore and we have a story and we, what is the big spiritual corruption spreading across the land of Avowed, and, it's based on the Pillars of Eternity game. So, I mean, this is a deep world that has been well thought out and well crafted, but within that, they're like, hey, go fucking play. Build your own story. Have freedom to become the star and not the star that I as the director or I as the lead writer want you to be. I mean, that's the power of the medium, and to see this game embracing it, it doesn't mean look, I'm excited for Indiana Jones. I don't want to spec out my character for Indy. I want to be Indy. Although it would be cool to spec out the attributes, but not the character. So there's room for both. I love both, but in the first party realm of consoles, there ain't a lot of people doing this as much as I would like. And I'm thrilled to see these sort of more systems-based action-adventure / RPGs really kind of taking root at least, certainly Xbox. One could argue Nintendo has at least a check in that column with Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, yes, it's Link, but he doesn't really have a lot of personality. Shut up. Shut up. No, he doesn't. By design, shut up. Yeah, no, I love this philosophy that she's espousing. Now, here's the trick, though. This is a very quick clip. Look at this. Let's go to Jank City, though. Now, again, this is alpha. Pre-alpha, potentially. Pre-alpha. Leave me alone. It's pre-alpha. But look at the jank. I mean, seriously. I mean, if you are Sony, you would have edited the life out of this clip. There's no way you would have this footage in the B-roll and it would allow to go out. And there's nothing about this that, right? It's just some NPC not only coming in between the conversation, but he just floats between. It's like he's in a Spike Lee movie, right? And then here's another one where he stands up. He just kind of, whether he's missing frames or it's just playing it too fast, right? I mean, there's no way if this was a game from like Sony, there's no way they would show you that. That would just be edited out, right? And so it really does bring up the question of, if the game ships with this kind of stuff, which it probably will, are you okay with it? Is it worth Because actually, before you answer that, let me play you this clip of what she says, the director of the game, about the size of the team. Listen to this.
I feel like one of the real strengths of being a mid-sized developer is we are, just large enough to be ambitious with the gameplay and the content we build, but also, small enough that we can still be nimble and again, still, allow people to take big swings.
So for me, when she says we're a medium-sized team, to which she attributes their ability to be flexible and make a lot more interesting decisions that aren't totally locked because things are too expensive to even breathe on because the risk of messing something up or slipping or what have you. But they're a smaller team, comparatively speaking, to something like a Naughty Dog. They are spending less money, and they're also still being ambitious, but they're putting that ambition in something which is, freedom of gameplay. But it comes at a cost, right? And the question then becomes, are you willing to go for the ride if they're like, hey, we're not breaking the bank. We're able to take some chances. But what comes with that is, look, we're not going to be spit polished and shining like a fucking diamond. Right? We're going to, some jank's going to get through. And even if you look back at the combat, the combat is probably going to be very fun and engaging if what they're saying is true. But I don't think anybody looks at the animation of these characters and is like, oh man, that is barely vertical slice for like a Sony Santa Monica demo. There's no fucking way if the characters were moving like that in God of War 2018, Ragnarok, even back in the day when I was working on those games, that we would show that to the world, let alone an executive that we were trying to impress within the halls of Sony, within the walls of Sony. There are people in the walls of Sony. It's very weird. That's why Kutaragi actually left, because one day they came in and he had a big sledgehammer and he was ripping up the drywall. He was trying to get the people out, and they're like, obviously, which way I lean on this. I like the gameplay. I like the freedom. The jank doesn't bother me. But I'm curious because there might be some people out there that are like, you know what, dude? I like what you're saying. I like what Obsidian is promising if they deliver. But if I'm going to get immersed and then suddenly I'm going to have NPCs sliding across my view, or when they stand up, they look like marionette puppets that went from just sort of being discarded to the puppeteer lifting the strings, and it's like, he pops into activity. I just can't be there. And I get it. I think those people, are missing out, but I do think there are people out there that feel that way. At least it seems like it from reading the internet. What do you think? Let's talk about it on a future live stream or in the comments below. Hopefully I'll see you live and we can shoot the shit about it and debate it and discuss it on a live episode of Gavin and Games coming up this week. All right. Be well, be safe, and I love you. And I love the nuts. That sounds filthy. These are good, though. Look at me. I'm so good at the product placement. Look. I'm so hyper. What's happened?